I think that I have not been able to escape a sort of rebellious atheism, and the reason I like the word atheist as opposed to the kinder, more hospitable agnostic, which I know most people go for, is because I like precisely the paradox of the word atheist, that one shouldn't be able to be as certain as the believer that God doesn't exist, right? I mean, that's why we have the escape valve of agnosticism. One is not supposed to, if you're an atheist, you're not supposed to know anything. You're not supposed to know, how can you possibly know that God doesn't exist? So I like that basic sort of logical paradox, and then I like the second paradox of atheism, which is, or at least rebellious atheism, the sort of Nietzschean thing, and Nietzsche had an enormous influence on me when I read him at university, is that, as you suggest, one shouldn't really be in a relationship with God at all if one doesn't believe in God. There's something a little bit strange to be railing against this entity that you have supposedly got beyond. And the obvious answer is that in some way I haven't and probably never will. It's why I like to read theology. Even though, say, for a pure atheist like, Richard Dawkins or something like that, theology is a completely, it'd be like reading, ancient cosmology or something. It's of some cultural interest, but intellectually entirely null. It's just equivalent to witchcraft or something. I find it more interesting than that, and not just as a human document, but as a way of, I suppose, continuing to argue about God, despite the slight comedy of that entrapment. But that's an entirely negative description of my position. Where I think one can turn that entrapment into something useful is, and I certainly feel this when I read Dawkins or Hitchens or Sam Harris or any of these contemporary atheists who have no time whatsoever for the buildings, the documents, the music, is that one should, in a sort of novelistic way, be able to understand what gripped believers and still grips them. And it's why, for instance, I'd like to do a lot more reading in and around Islam, so that at some point I might be able to write about, the theological issues and try to connect them to theological issues that I've wrestled with. But it should, as I say, it should enable one to approach writers and thinkers who are in some sort of relationship with God, and not simply dismiss them as idiots.